manage all at once. So if you have questions, will you put them in the chat, and then hopefully I won't miss anything. And then Ms. Patterson said that she'd kind of watched that chat for us also. This isn't working very well. Okay, hold on. Let's see if it's better if I push play. All right. Is my chat window, is it in your way, is it? Somebody give me some.
No, it's different on our screens.
Okay, and so right now you're just seeing ACT Science Review on the big screen, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Then we're gonna go. Okay, the overview of this session, we have an hour. What time, Helen, what time do I need to stop? She's on mute. Okay, she can let me know when it's time to stop. And so in this session, we're going to go through some strategies and a couple of practice, a few practice questions. I'm not going to give tons and tons of time to practice, but one of the great things about this book, I hope you figured it out already, is that in the information they have 11:10. Thank you. They have lots of hints and stuff, and then there are little practice questions throughout there and little drills, but then you have 4 complete practice ACT tests. And I don't know if other teachers have told you so far, but practicing taking the test is a really good idea. So you could set a timer and just practice a section, just one, the science or the reading or the math or whatever. But it would also probably be a good idea to put yourself through the paces of taking an entire test. So I'll encourage you to do that on your own time. Hopefully you have a highlighter or a pen to make notes in your book as you go. Okay, there are 4 chapters that we're going to review. Chapter 20 talks about test structure, the types of the questions there are, and test taking strategies. Chapter 21 is science reasoning and skills. So it talks about, what kinds of science knowledge and science skills do you need. And then 22 and 23 talk about tackling different types of questions that are on the ACT. So that's where we're headed, okay? So if you'll start on chapter 20, the page number on the 2020 version is 317, and it'll be pretty close to that on the 2019 version, okay? So the learning targets are to help you understand the structure of the science section of the test, and then maximize your score by using a strategic approach. I'm sure the others have told you that being test wise is a huge piece of the ACT. Especially in the science section, I can't speak for the others, but in the science section, maybe similar to the reading sections, tons of the information that you need is in there. It's a matter of time management and knowing how best to access that information so that you don't get bogged down and you can move through those. I saw the question, what page again? I'm at about page 318. Okay, so what's on the science section? You've got 40 questions and 35 minutes. So right there, you can see you've got less than a minute a question, and they come in passages, and there will be 6 to 7 passages. And one of the hard things about the science section is it's last, and test fatigue is real. So make sure that you are paying attention to that. When they tell you to take your break, take your break. And just remember these strategies, because you do get test fatigue, and that's challenging. One of the great things is that you don't need to know facts, because the information that you need to know is in the passage, but they draw from these kinds of disciplines in science. And the nice thing is, if you've done a good job in your science classes in high school, you have background knowledge that makes it easier to understand the information in the passage. So for example, I teach biotechnology, and in the past I've had kids say, wow, there was a question that talked about some stuff we'd learned in biotech, and it made it so much easier because I was already familiar with the stuff. So it just your background information that you've gotten from those science classes is helpful, along with the skills that they've taught you in those science classes. All right. So what types of questions are there? There are 3 different types of passages that have questions associated with them. And this is the breakdown. You've got charts and graphs, experiments, and dual science passages. Okay, so those are the 3 types. The first 2 types have quite a bit in common. The third type, that dual science passage, is a different type of question. So you're going to approach those a little bit differently, and we have some strategies about both of those. Okay, so the first type, charts and graphs, those are a data representation. And what you have in those passages is they'll have charts or diagrams, some type of image. It could be a graph, could be a lot of things. But in those, what you are required to do is pull information out of those graphs and charts. Okay, and that's a total of 12 questions. And sometimes there'll be prose there as well, but these questions will always have figures, always. Okay. The next type are the ones that are experiments or summaries of research. And so they'll talk about experiments that were done, and then you have the results or information from that experiment. And they usually have figures, but not always. It could be all prose. So just because it doesn't have any pictures on that passage doesn't mean that it's automatically that third type. Okay. It's helpful on this one if you understand how scientists structure their experiments. That helps you a lot there, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay. All right, and then finally the third type, and there's only one of these, and this one sometimes can take a little bit more time because there's so much reading often. It could have images. It sometimes has figures, but usually it's separated into sections that it's going to say scientist 1 or point of view 1 and point of view 2 and point of view 3, and it could be a scientist or it could be a person, but they're offering conflicting views, and you have to kind of dissect that. And there's some really, really clever strategies on how to attack this type of passage. Okay, so the other thing that this and by now I'm about on, this PowerPoint, by the way, follows along through your book. So if you want to follow through the book and kind of highlight as we go, I'm on the 2020, I'm now down to about page 321. There's this thing that they call POOD. It's the personal order of difficulty. Someone was, I don't know, could we possibly quickly go back to, do you mean back 2 slides, Luis? Luis, tell me what you need and I'll. Right there?
I just need this real fast, just this page.
Okay, yep. Okay, so I'll talk to you about POOD while Luis takes a look at this slide. The personal order of difficulty, the thing that you don't want to do is get to a passage or get to questions and get stuck on them and waste time because you're grappling with a really hard question. It could be that it is just a really difficult question or a difficult passage. And if you waste a whole bunch, or I shouldn't say waste, if you spend a whole bunch of time on this one, there could be some other really easy ones or easy questions or easier passages or passages that maybe you're more familiar with because you've done some additional study in school on those kinds of topics. And if you spend all of your time on something more difficult, you could totally miss, run out of time before you get to the easy ones. So that's what you don't want to do. So what Princeton Review, whoever these people are, who are they? The Princeton Review, one of the things that they suggest is figure out which questions are easier for you to do and do those first. So it may be that experiments are super easy for you, or you look at it and you're like, oh crap, it's one of those experiments ones again. I'm gonna, pardon me, I'm gonna skip this passage and come back to it. And so don't be afraid to skip around a little bit. Now, you don't want to spend all of your time, well, I'll do this one first and then I'll come back and I'll do this. That's got to be a quick decision for you. Okay. So watch for the easy figures and familiar topics. Those are the kinds of things to watch for to decide, what do I want to do first? So I suggest when you crack that book open, break the seal, flip through and find one that looks easy for you. Start there. Okay. Pace yourself. Don't waste time struggling with a hard question. This one is so hard for me because my personality, I need to be right. And I dig in and I really want to figure this out. And it's really hard for me to say, okay, I just can't comprehend this one, skip it, I'll come back. And I end up wasting time because I'm so doggone stubborn. So if that's part of your personality, you gotta be like, okay, personality, take your need to be right and be so super OCD, and we're gonna put that in a little box and we can open that up later. But for right now, you gotta just pound through it and move on and come back if you get stuck, okay? And then the third thing is the process of elimination. If you're a good process of eliminator, you can sometimes knock your 4 choices down 1. So you just went from a 25% chance of guessing correctly to a 33% chance of guessing correctly. And if you can knock 2 out, you've got that down to a 50-50. And there are some questions where you have the question and the answer is either yes or no because. And if wow, it's not yes, it's no. And all I have to do is figure out the because. Don't even bother reading those yeses, knock them out, and then deal with those 2. And so process of elimination can be really great. Oh, another thing, I hope your other teachers have talked to you about this. It's always amazing to me when I watch people take the ACT to see students who don't write on their test. That booklet is yours. You get to write on it. Well, you have to turn it in at the end. It's ACTs, but you're the only one who gets to use it. So use your pencil, mark it up. So when your process of eliminating, boom, boom, knock them out with your pencil. If you have a question when you want to come back to it, put a big question with a circle or make some sort of mark that says, come back if I have time at the end. When you find my main ideas, underline, please, please, please write in that booklet, okay? And some of the strategies that I'll go through talk about writing in that booklet. All right, next one. Okay, will you go to about page 325? It's the chapter 20 summary. Will you please go and highlight and read that chapter summary? I'm going to give you 1 minute. Read through that and see if there's anything that you have questions about. And then Isaac, I'll pop back to your question in just a minute.
What are we supposed to highlight?
Oh, main ideas. So look through that summary and highlight anything that popped out to you or things that you think are really important.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm having a hard time finding it in the 2019 version.
Okay, so if you look at the bottom of the book, it'll have the chapter number. So this is chapter 22. So we're working on chapter 20. So if you'll go find the 20s and just flip through to the end, and let me see if I wrote down. I'm going to grab a 2019 book that I think I have. Okay, the 2019, is this what y'all with the 2019 look like? It's all gold and shiny. Ooh, premium. It's on page 307. All right, there are a couple of questions. It says, so is it definitely going to be on paper? Last time I used a computer, Helen said that that depends on the school and location. We may see more tests on computers. It will also depend on what's going on with COVID situations, I'm sure, at the time. Bella asked, are we allowed to highlight in our books with ink and stuff? You're only allowed to have a pencil. You can't have on a paper test, you can't have highlighters. So it'll be a pencil. Yeah, so any other questions before we go to the next one? Okay, let's go to chapter 21. So in the old 2019, that'll be starting on page 310. On the 2020, this starts on 328. Okay.
I think I have a completely different book.
Oh, really? Is it by Princeton?
Wiley? Here. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, I can't see who the publisher is.
It says
This one's by Penguin Random House is the publisher, and it's by the staff of the Princeton Review. If you look in the very first cover page. So it looks like yours might be a different review.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that is okay. I'll be fine.
Yeah. So just, Michaela, maybe just take some notes on this. And if you want me to send you after this is over, I could send you a PDF of my my keynote if you're interested. And then, oh, Helen said your Gear Up counselor should be able to give you the correct book.
Oh, I just haven't been able to go to school, so.
Gotcha.
Yes, I will probably pick it up next week.
Okay. Kristen Evans, chapter 21 starts on the 2020. It starts on 328. Okay. On the old one, 2019, it starts on 310. Oh, I told you 310. That's the one that most people don't have. I'm going to get confused back and forth. Woo-hoo. Okay, so 310 for the old one, 328 for the new one. Okay, we good to go? And yes, you can totally, these books are yours. You can highlight them, you can ink them, you can do whatever, but it's the test. If you're on the paper version of the ACT, that you're not allowed highlighters. You're only allowed pencils. Okay. All right, scientific reasoning. Get on my right thing. Okay, so in your science classes, you should have been learning about scientific reasoning skills, and this has a lot to do with how scientists conduct experiments and what is considered evidence, and making claims, and identifying trends in graphs and curves. So a lot of those science skills, you could even think of them as literacies, okay? A couple of rules, and they talk about these rules on page 328. There's a little call out box that says assumptions. In science, we don't accept assumptions. When people just make an assumption, that's not scientific, it's not backed by data, and be careful about that in your ACT questions, because you might assume something that is not so, okay? Another thing to remember is that when scientists are doing science and they're doing tests and experiments, they test one variable at a time. And I think most students learn about dependent and independent variables. I hope that sounds familiar to you. The independent variable is the one that they're testing. It's independent. It's the one alone variable that gets tested. The dependent variable is the one that depends on what you did in the experiment. Sometimes it's called the responding variable. And then everything else should be controlled. So all of the other conditions should be the same, and those are called control or controlled variables. So remember that experiments should be testing one variable at a time. All right. Trends. Watch for your trends in both your tables and your charts. So on page 330, it talks about trends. And if you have a graph, oh, I don't know how to use the whiteboard thing. How do I do that? I don't know how. Oh, annotate. Let's see. Can I draw on things? Hold on, I'm learning. This is an experiment
I
here.
think you can. I think if you hit annotate, you can write on it.
Okay.
You may have to go back to share screen again if you want the whiteboard.
Okay, I'm not gonna play with this. I'm gonna go old school. If you have a graph, I'm gonna grab a marker so you can see what I'm doing. You've got graphs like this in your book. If your graph goes like that, as this variable is increasing this way, this variable is also increasing that way. We're going to call that a direct proportion or a direct relationship. It means they both increase. One increases and the other increases. Okay, if you see a graph that looks like that, the slope of the line is negative. That means as this one is increasing, hold on, yeah, as this one increases, this one decreases. It's going down that way. Does that make sense? I can't see if you nod or not. You can only see the trends. Okay.
Yeah, I understand.
You got it? Okay. And then you can see, sometimes they call them direct relationship and inverse relationship. Okay, so direct would be that positive, and inverse is the negative. Okay. Another thing, if you look at tables, actually we might get to this in a second. Hang on, let me just see where we're going to get to this. This might be my favorite strategy, but we're not there yet. I get so excited. I just want to tell you about the strategy. It's so cool. Okay, if you flip through pages 332 and 333, you can see that they're talking about direct linear relationships. So you can also look at linear versus curved, like exponential. And a lot of times in science, we see exponential growth or exponential decay. And so watch for those kinds of curves. And then if you see a graph where the line is just flat, like at the bottom of 333, that's where there is not a relationship. Okay, on our old book, that's page 315. Okay. All right. Questions about graphs? Are we good there? Okay. Oh, inconsistent trends and no relationships. So if you see a flat line, there's not a relationship, like one is not causing the other. And inconsistent trends, sometimes you even see graphs that are just kind of like wonky, like up and downy, up and downy, up and downy. And so it's just inconsistent. You can't say that one thing, increasing one thing is causing an increase or a decrease in the other thing. It's harder to establish a cause and effect with those. Okay. All right. Next, hold on. Oh yeah, now I'm to my, okay, this is my, oh, now I can't do the thing. Hold on. Oh boy. I can't find my mouse. Where's my mouse? Oh, I just saw it. because oh, almost there. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Can I see my screen now? Okay. Wow, I lost control of my presentation. Okay. There we go. There we go. There we go. Okay. Your strategies to identify trends quickly. This is my favorite. Okay, if you go look at the page, let's see. At the top of page 335 on the new one, 317 on the old one. They have a table, looks like this. So you just have a table of data. And the headings are, one says number of half-lives, expired for radioactive thorium, amount of thorium remaining. The cool thing about this is when you're just looking for trends, it doesn't even matter what it's about. What you do is, the strategy is you look at the first column, so like the X column, and you look and see, do you see an upward trend or a downward trend? Yeah, sorry, thank you, 335, good job guys, thanks for taking care of each other. Okay, in that first column, can you see that the numbers are increasing? What they recommend doing, are they increasing? Yes, they are, is going down to the bottom of that table and putting an up arrow. That means this thing is an increasing trend right there. We're just looking for trends. And then if I go over here, it starts at 1 and goes to a half and a fourth and an eighth and a 16th. That's a decreasing trend. And so I put a down arrow. And right there, that helps you see that as this thing is increasing as the first thing, so the number of half-lives expired, as that increases, then this other variable decreases. So it's a really quick way to establish, to look at those numbers and see, okay, what is the trend here? The thing about a data table is, especially sometimes when you have a lot of numbers, it's hard. The nice thing about a graph is it's a visual picture, right? You can see it. But on a table, it's harder to see that because it's numbers. It's not got a nice little slopey line that's going up or that it's going down or something like that. And so if you put those arrows at the bottom of your table, it helps you identify trends in tables where they're harder to see. Okay. And then if it's all over the place, it's up, it's down, it's back and forth, then maybe put a 0 or something at the bottom. Okay. All right. That's my favorite thing. Here's my least favorite thing. I hate it when they do this. They'll give you multiple tables in one question. And one table talks about, it has a couple of pieces of information, and then there's another table, and you know they're related, but you're not sure how. That's where it gets confusing for me. And so they have a really great strategy for that. They look on page 337. Where it says multiple variables, and the old one, page 319. Okay, 337 and 319. If you look at those two tables, look for the units or the headings of the tables that they have in common. Okay, can you see what they have in common? They have resistance in common. They have those ohms, that upside down horseshoe, that means ohms. So resistance is in common. So if you circle the resistance and say, or underline or something like that and say, okay, the resistance is in common, that means where I have a when I have a 7.5 resistance, the length and the cross-sectional area, those are going to relate to one another because they're both when it's 7.5. And if you look at that 7.5 is the only thing that the only number that those two tables have in common. And if you look on the next page, so new one 338, old one 320. Okay. That first question at the top that says, based on the results shown in table 3 and 4, the cross-sectional area used in the first experiment resulting in table 3 was most likely. What you can use is you can use those similarities from the two table to answer that without even knowing anything about that question. I'll let you look at that for just a second and ask questions if I don't know if I explained myself very well on that. Does anybody have any questions on that one? How you can use the similar headings. Okay. All right, this is my next unfavorite thing, is down at the bottom of page 338 or 320 on the old one. When they put graphs, I'm real good at graphs that have two axes. But when they put a third axis on there and they've got variables here on the one side, across the bottom, and then up the other side, that's where my brain just has a really hard time. So it says, be careful to look at the correct line and the correct axis. So I'm going to give you just a minute to see if you can answer number 2 at the bottom of that page, either page 338 or 320. And I'll try and put this up real close for, who was it, Michaela or somebody who had the wrong book? I'll put it up real close here. Maybe you can read it. Let me see if I can get it. There's the question. And then right there is the graph.
I'm also just writing down the page numbers so I can.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, the temperature, it tells you the correct answer. The temperature in degrees Fahrenheit when cloud cover was at its highest is 70. And so you got to make sure that you're looking at the percent cloud cover is the big dots, and it's highest over on the early side. And what does it say? What was the temperature? You got to look at the temperature, but it's not 90 right where the dot is. It's 70 down at the bottom because the temperature is the dashy line. So what they're doing is they're putting graphing two pieces of information on that same graph. And so they say, okay, the temperature, no, cloud cover was the highest early. So what was the temperature at early? And so you got to look at the dash line, and temperature was 70. Okay. I hate those questions. Those ones are tricky. So make sure that you're not just picking, oh, 90 is next to my high cloud cover, because that's not what that's asking. All right. Okay, moving on. Take a minute, go to the summary of chapter 21. So page 340 on the new one, page 322 on the old one. Read through that summary. I'll give you a minute to just highlight the most important things to you, and or put any questions in the chat. Whew, gotta hustle. Leslie asked a really good question. Is there any question that are going to seem too easy for it to be the correct answer? It wouldn't surprise me. Sometimes the question, and it'll be really helpful if you go through these sample questions in the book, the sample like drills and stuff, because sometimes it's like the answer is right there, boom. And other times you really have to do some analysis. So, and there are different levels of difficulty of these questions. So some of them will be easier and some of them will be harder. Good question, Leslie. All right, we've got like 20 minutes left, 18 minutes left, I think. So let's get going. Any other questions? Put them in the chat. Let's go on to the basic approach, chapter 22. Okay. Okay. On this one, it shows you a 3-step basic approach to answer questions that have figures. So those are those first 2 types, the charts and graphs, passages, and the experiments. Okay. So what they want you to do is, what these strategies are trying to help you do is access the information. Uh-oh, you can't hear me? Am I talking too quiet, or did something happen to my sound?
I can hear you.
Okay,
I can hear you too.
okay. So hopefully, Dennis, maybe you can crank the, oh, okay, good. I was afraid maybe I touched something. Don't freak out the old people with that kind of stuff. All right. Okay, the basic approach, so you're trying to access information quickly, okay, and not waste time on unnecessary stuff, because sometimes they put unnecessary stuff there for you to be time suckers, and you don't want to do that. So here we go. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take, what does it say, 10 to 30 seconds to review the charts and graphs and figures. Okay, take a look at them. Here are the things that you need to be looking for. More than the nitty-gritty numbers and details, look at the headings of tables and the variables, the variables and the units. Okay, so if it's like distance in meters and time, are we talking seconds or years? And a lot of times you maybe underline those, okay? Identify the relationships between variables. So that's where you're looking for those kinds of trends in your graphs, or you're marking up your tables. And that's what the third bullet is. Mark up your tables with arrows to help you visualize those trends when it's in a table. When it's in a graph, you can see the table. You can see the trends pretty well, but when it's in a table, it's harder. And then you're watching for those common variables in multiple tables, like we did on that last one, where you had the resistance that was the same between the two. And when you find them that they're the same, circle them so that you can remember. So that's a really quick, just just preview those figures, okay? And you're trying to make sense of some of the information, okay? Then go down to the questions. Now you'll notice that it didn't say read that full introduction before those figures. Now sometimes you might want to skim, just glance, but a lot of times what you want to do is go down to the question, see if you understand it from just the graphs and tables and charts, or if you need to go back and get more information in that passage, okay? Oftentimes the questions are asking for a trend or value from the figure. So that goes back to Leslie's question. Are some of these going to be really easy? Yeah, sometimes they're just looking for a trend or a detail, a value from the figure. And so if you know which figure talks about what, because you've, underlined or circled those headings, you can go pick that information out quickly. Okay, and then read only what you need to. Use the information from the figures first. Then if you're like, okay, but I don't understand this context, then go read the little paragraph thing from the figures, okay? I mean, from the introduction stuff. Okay, then you're gonna go work the answers. Remember process of elimination. So you read the question. If there's anything that you know, oh, that's not it, get rid of it. And in fact, if you can get an answer in your head kind of before, that helps you know what you're looking for. Remember, if you have your 2 yeses, 2 nos, yes because, and no because, can you eliminate either the yes or the no? And that takes it down to 2, a 50-50 chance. And then look at the reasoning and eliminate false reasons. Okay, go back to the first one. Is that what you want? Vanessa, did that help? Good. One more. Right there. Thank you for letting me know to slow down and go back to those for you. Okay, those of you who are just waiting, go ahead and go to the summary on page 340 and on the old one, page 322. Go ahead and start previewing those summaries. Okay, Vanessa's good with that page. Luis, was this the one you wanted? Step 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Helen, for putting those page numbers up.
Could you possibly scroll down just a little bit?
Scroll down.
Yeah, there's just, I can't read this bottom part.
Oh. How's that?
That's better. I just like to read only what you need to use information. I just can't see all of that.
Huh, I wonder why. So can you see it now?
Yes.
AJ, I think so too, but that's okay.
Okay, I got it. We're
Got
good.
it?
Thank you.
Okay. Yep, you bet. Okay. Do you have any questions about those strategies? When you see charts and graphs in those questions, and it's not the next kind, not the dual science passages that we'll talk about in a minute, it's really in your best interest to dissect those charts and graphs. Get the information out of there first. Oh, explain step 3 again. Okay, step 3. So after you remember the first thing, you looked at the charts, mark them up, find your common variables, all that stuff. Then you read the question. Make sure you know what it's asking and that you have the information. If you don't have all the information that you need, go back, find it. And you might even need to go to the little usually there's like a little introductory paragraph that tells you about the tables. Maybe you need to go get some information out of there. Okay, so that's step 1 and 2. Step 3 is where you work the answers. So you're going to look and see, okay, can any of those 4 choices, can I just eliminate that out? Because that brings my chances up of even guessing if I have to guess. Okay, if I can knock 2 out of there, I've got a 50-50 chance. So work on eliminating things that are contradicted by the figures. And then if you have 2 of them, say yes because, like on page, there's one that does that in here somewhere. Maybe it's later in the book, but there's an example in one of these chapters that we're going through that it has a yes because, no because, no because. And when I was just reviewing this last night, I was like, oh, no. I knew it was a no or something like that. So I could just eliminate those yeses and just focus on the reasons that are with the no. Okay, did that help, Elizabeth? Okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, now we are on chapter 23, right? Did we go to through chapter 22? I feel lost.
We were at the slide of the summary slide of chapter something. That one right there, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, now go to chapter 23. Oh, we're going to skip this and we'll come back if we have time, but I think we only have like 9 minutes left. I was going to have you do, there's a drill, which is a passage. It has the information and then the 6 or 7 questions. I was going to have you do that and take 5 minutes, but we don't have time. But what you could do on your own time is set a timer for about 5 minutes, because if you think about this, if there are 6 or 7 passages on the test, and you have 35 minutes. So let's assume 7 passages, 35 minutes. That means you have 5 minutes for a passage and all of its questions. So I would go to those drills in the book and set a timer for 5 minutes and see if you can complete one passage in 5 minutes. And I think that'll help you with pacing, because what you want to do is you want to go quick, but you want to not go so quick that you're not getting any information at all. right? There's kind of that sweet spot, and you're going to need to practice to find that sweet spot for you, because you might be going through and thinking you're going fine, and then all of a sudden the beeper beeps and you're like, holy cow, I answered 2 questions in my 5 minutes. I got to speed it up. Or maybe you're going so fast, but you're missing a whole bunch because you're not taking enough time to make sure that you're being accurate. Is that? Ellery just asked if the test is on a computer or on paper. When we have in the past administered it at Provo High, it's paper. So I think what Helen said is it's going to depend on where you take that, and so just know before you go, I guess. When we've done that at schools, and I don't know if all schools give the ACT. At Provo High, we give the ACT to all of our juniors, and it's a paper test. Okay. All right. Dual science passages. That's where we are now. Okay. This is the one, you'll only have one of these on the test, one of this type of passage with its questions. And I think it said that they have 7 questions usually with this one. But what it is it sometimes it's called conflicting scientists. What it is you have 2 or more people giving a different explanation, different viewpoint. And that's the thing in science. Scientists don't always agree. But the idea is they're going to make claims or main ideas, and they're going to support that with evidence. And so what you're supposed to do is read this passage and answer these questions. Here's where they get you. It takes a lot of time to read the passage, right? And here's another place they get you. You read this passage and you have scientist 1, scientist 2, and maybe even scientist 3. And then you get to the question and you can't remember who said what, and there's all this information is just all jumbled in your mind. So these guys have a really clever strategy. I think this is so cool. So first off, look at the questions only, not the options. You're just looking at it's called the stem of the question. So you're just going, number 1 is asking, boom, number 2. And what you're gonna do is mark out to the side, is this asking me about scientist 1 or scientist 2, or is it both, like it's comparing or contrasting them? You know, what do both scientist 1 and 2 say about this? Or how do scientists 1 and 2 conflict? Okay, so just go down the questions and mark a 1, a 2, or both. Okay, before you even read anything. Okay, then you're going to look and see which one has the most questions about it. Is it mostly about 1, mostly about 2? Okay, let's suppose that most of the questions were about scientist 1. Then you go back and you read scientist 1 stuff and answer the 1 questions. Then you go read the scientist 2 stuff, answer the 2 questions, and then by that point you should be able to answer the both questions. It keeps you from getting all of that information all confused. Okay, so if you look at page 359 in the new one, or are we on time? We're doing okay. 359 or, I'm behind. Hold on. Yeah, in the old one, in the 2019, they called it Fighting Scientists. They're just changing what they're calling it. It's page 341. So 359 or 341. They have the 7 questions. Go down that really fast and do that. Mark it 1 or 2 or both. I'll give you like 15 seconds. All right. At the bottom, it says it tells you which questions you should have 1 and 2. Question 2 should have a 1, and question 5 and 6 should have a 2. Then it says, what does this tell us? We should read hypothesis 2 first. So for this particular passage, you would go and read 2 answer the 2 questions, then go back and read 1, answer the 1 question, and then do the both questions. Are there any questions about that strategy? Does that make sense to you? Tristan, that was page 359 in the 2020 and 341 in the 2019. Okay. All right. So step 1, preview. Step 2, one side at a time. And then what it does is it talks about when you're reading, you should underline. But how many of you are mega underliners? You start underlining the important stuff and pretty soon it feels like everything's super important and you've just got like a completely highlighted, completely underlined thing. And it does you no good. Okay. I've done that. Pretty soon you stand back and you're like, the whole thing's yellow. This tells me nothing. Okay. So what you need to do, what should you be looking for? Yeah, Michaela, me too. And maybe you even have a couple of colors. So you got some yellow, you got some pink, you got some blue, and pretty soon you can't remember what. It's just a colorful, beautiful thing that means nothing. The things you should underline. Watch for the hypothesis or the claim. The book might call it like the main idea, the main point. Okay. On the bottom of page 360, it says your underlined version should look like this. And what they underlined on hypothesis 2, it says the event at the KT boundary was neither sudden nor isolated. It was a consequence of minor shifts in the Earth's weather that spanned the KT boundary. Can you hear the way that that's written, that is a claim? They're saying, this is the way it is. In English, maybe they call it a thesis statement. I don't know, I'm not an English teacher, okay? There's their claim. Then they're going to justify that claim. They're gonna give you all this evidence that supports their idea, okay? So then when you go and you look at the questions, that will help you go back to say, okay, what did that scientist, what was their main point? What was their point of view? Oh yeah, the event was neither sudden nor isolated. We have minor shifts, so it wasn't sudden. We had minor shifts that went all over the place, okay? Then when you go to the other scientist and you're going to underline their main point, their claim, it says fossil record, if you go forward to page 363, their underlined example, they underlined fossil records confirm that dinosaurs as well as other life forms were suddenly wiped out. So the first lady was saying that it was not sudden or isolated. The second scientist is saying that it was sudden. So they're conflicting, okay? All right, let me see here. Then once you're answering the questions, remember that you're using your POE, that means process of elimination. Oh, Gabriella says time's up, okay. And then return to the passage when you do need details, okay? Any questions on that? Because we are to the end here. Just looking to see. Okay, let me just show you what the other drill I was going to have you do so that you could do this at home. Oh, that was step 3, the other side. We already did this. Step 4, compare and contrast. That's when you do the 1s and the 2s, like the ones that were both. Okay, summary. You can review that summary. And there are, how many? There are a couple of drills in this page. Drill 1, drill 2. Yeah, there were 2 drills at the end of this chapter, and the drills are an entire passage. So the passage and there's 7 questions. So you could practice doing that strategy with marking up 1 or 2 or both, doing the one with the most first, and then going back and doing the other one, and then doing the both at the end. Okay. All right, Helen, it looks like it looks like we're to the end. My final parting wisdom, my advice is for you to go and set a 35-minute timer, do all 40 questions, and practice those strategies. Now, before you do that, you might want to go through these chapters again and do the drills, do the specific examples, because they have like specific little example questions that have you practice those certain strategies, and then they talk to you about, okay, this is what you should have done and why, and everything is pretty handy. Another handy tool is that the answer guides will not only give you, like this one says, did I write down what I did not write down the page of the answers, but it tells you it's in chapter 25. And when you go and look at those answers for each question, it'll tell you the correct answer, but then it also gives a rationale and an explanation. So if you're missing questions, you can look those up and see why. What did you miss? Okay. All right. I think I went 3 minutes over, but Helen, I think
You're great. Thank you so much. And everybody knows we're gonna leave this breakout room. You have a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back for English. All right. All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Francis. Appreciate
you're welcome,
you being
Helen.
here.
Thank you.
All right. You guys go ahead and take your break, and then we'll come back for English.
Get the wiggles out.
Yeah, go walk around for a minute.
High school kids are not too big to get the wiggles out. I'm not too big to get the wiggles out.
Sure. Well, thank you for spending time with us this morning. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I hope that was helpful. It's really hard to know without seeing the kiddos, but
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah.
And thank you for